and welcome to this masterclass. At the time of filming, this is actually intended to be a little secret, little light-hearted bit of fun tutorial because over in the DPL Atelier, my members and I are celebrating 2 whole years. 2 whole years of Atelierversary goodness, of developing our wardrobes, advancing our skills, coming together as a creative community, and I have been leaving a few breadcrumbs and I've given you a nice fun little treasure hunt. So if you are watching this, there might be a few reasons as to why you're watching this coming from the future, but if you're watching this, you have either completed the treasure hunt and discovered this bonus video, or a little bit further down the line I do plan on releasing it on YouTube, because what me and Mary are going to be covering today, I can barely raise my arms. I went to the gym for the first time in gosh knows how long and your girl is sore, okay? Let's leave it at that.
All right, stand back everyone.
So I'll be working like a little T-Rex today, but what Mary and myself are going to be covering is a very, very highly requested video all about padding out the stand. Now Mary and I, we're not the same size, spoiler alert, and she is a cheap stand, so if you're watching this and thinking I don't want to invest in a dress form, that's quite a big commitment, I'm just dabbling with sewing, Mary cost me 20 quid. It's because she's polystyrene. With too much work when we're draping, this can disform, okay? I don't know if that's a word, but for the purpose of this exercise, it's a really, she's stood the test of time, don't get me wrong. Mary's my oldest mannequin and I still use her all the time. She's a little bit wobbly on her feet, okay? The more high-end mannequins and dress forms that you buy, they're going to be a lot more secure down there. But she's really fantastic for me to use for my personal projects, and as I'm going to be padding her out today and taking you along on the journey, her styrofoam base is really, really good to explore this exercise. Now, a few things I'm going to be using today are steel-headed pins, meaning the flat top. You do not want to use the ball-headed pins. What that's going to do when you're trying to build a silhouette and bespoke silhouette is it's going to give you lumps and bumps. We want to make sure that those lumps and bumps, however unique we are, reflect our body and nothing else. So using steel-headed pins is going to maintain a really flat surface so that once we've padded our stand out, we can drape to our heart's content. The next thing I am going to be using is drape tape. Now, I believe this is called Chauvin drape tape in particular, and the reason why this is so fantastic is because it has centimetre incremental markings, and when I am cross-referencing my own measurements to Mary over here, who's about to become my twin, it really helps systemize the process, make it very efficient, and I can double check that my shoulder length is as it should be, that my apex to apex is the right measurement, because the Chauvin tape with centimetre increments is there to help. You can get drape tape in a variety of colours. You do not need it for this exercise, but if you are going to follow this word for word, then that would be my suggestion and my recommendation. Of course, alongside that, I'm going to be using scissors, and you want to equip yourself with a variety of materials. This is a great way to use up your scraps so you can actually pad your stand. Now that could be shoulder pads, that could be cups as in bra cups, that could be wadding and batting and polystyrene stuffing. Whatever you have, we really can start to build and sculpt a unique body. And so finally, the reason why Mary is so good is because she actually comes with a cover already. Now, the final stage of this, which I will speak you through, is all about covering her up so that we have a complete smooth surface to work on. I have indigestion. So the first thing we need to do is we need to take our very own measurements. Now, there are ample resources available to you for taking your measurements, so I'm not actually going to be covering that in this tutorial. We're just going to be jumping into padding out Mary, but you'll be able to find a free tutorial on YouTube, or of course if you're a member you have a lot more detailed resources at your disposal at your disposal in the DPL Atelier under your modules. So we want to be taking our bust measurement, our waist measurement, our hip measurement, our shoulder measurement, our neck measurement. Every single measurement you can muster, you want to be taking it so that we can make an accurate reflection as we begin to build and sculpt our mannequin. Your waist to your hip, your nape to your waist. It really is all going to be cross-referenced as we move forward. And once you have those measurements, you then want to take the measurements of your chosen mannequin. Now, for obvious reasons, it is a lot easier to size down. So if you are in the market for a dress form, if your budget can't stretch that much, a £20 styrofoam dress form, this is intended to be a shop display as opposed to actually creating on the body. But of course, as creative souls, we can get away with anything and make do with what we have. So it's a case of equipping yourself with a mannequin. If you are between sizes, I would always advise going smaller because of course we can pad them out. That is the beauty of it. And so once you have your measurements taken down and noted somewhere, you then want to take down your mannequin's measurement. So you want to understand that I definitely know my waist is going to be bigger than Mary's here, and I know that my hip is going to be bigger than Mary's. My bust, definitely not. I'm very broad around my bust line, but I know for sure if I was going to be adding volume on Mary, that the volume would actually be added to the back because my back is so broad. I do not have, as you can see, if I turn sideways, oh my arms, they're so sore. As you can see, I do not have the most prominent bust. So another thing before you're jumping in is to just be aware of your unique figure, and a great way to do this is to take a photo of yourself. It really helps us disconnect as opposed to reflecting on what we see in the mirror. A lot of body dysmorphia can come from that. We can see things that aren't actually a true reflection. We can be very critical of ourselves. So if you took a photo of yourself, that will actually give you a step back to take it at an analytical perspective. I know with my scoliosis and my spine having a 48-degree curve that if I lift up and show you now, I hope that you can see this. Become closer to the camera. Look at how I kink in here, okay? This is down to my scoliosis. At the time of filming, the abs are non-existent. But I know that if I'm going to be adding to my waist measurement on Mary here, that I'm actually going to build out one side a little bit more than the other to account for this asymmetry. And having that understanding and getting raw and real and honest with yourself when you are padding out a stand is really, really important, because although this can be raw for some of us, getting naked or getting down to your undergarments in front of a mirror and facing the truth, or whatever you want to call it, can actually be triggering for some. But I really encourage you to make peace with your beautiful, unique figure, because the whole purpose of this is to create a mimic of us and a replication of us so that we can dress it, and dress it in clothes that make us feel wonderful. There is no point lying to yourself or taking a measurement with your tummy sucked in or your tummy pushed out and lying to yourself when you come to replicate that on the stand, because regardless, you will never make clothes that fit your actual realistic, unique figure. So take as long as you need. You certainly don't need to share it with anybody. This can be a little project that is your little secret, that is you carving out creative time for yourself. And once you have taken those measurements, once you have a real understanding of your unique shape, whether that is asymmetric or otherwise, you're ready to replicate it on your mannequin. So the first thing I'm going to do on Mary is actually pad out her hip. I'm very confident that my hip is a lot more prominent than hers, and so this is an area I would feel most at home to start building and sculpting. I'm not going to doubt myself. There won't be a lack of confidence. I know that I need to add volume to the hip. Now I also know from my measurements that my nape to waist and my waist to hip is actually a little longer in the body than Mary herself is. So I'm going to be lowering my hip, i.e. my bra pads, and I'm actually going to be pinning these a little bit further down, and these can just replicate a makeshift version of a buttock, and I'm going to push my steel-headed pin all the way in so that that is as flat as possible. Do the same this side. And then with a pin, I'm actually going to tuck the bottom of this under, and I will pin that in as well, trying to make it as secure as possible before doing the same this side. I then want to get a tape measure And I want to just measure around the base, around the widest part, keeping my tape measure parallel to the floor. I don't want to take a wonky measurement, and I just want to take that measurement around and cross-reference it to my own. Having measured Mary here, she has gone from 87 centimeters to 91. My measurement is actually 94. So I know that I need to build a layer and continue to increase the volume until her measurements match my own. I'm going to be using a scrap piece of wadding here. Again, wadding you can get in a variety of weights, but if you want to, it's just a case of building the layers. I would go for a thinner weight and keep adding. You have a lot more control on padding out your stand that way, as opposed to getting a thick weight and really struggling to actually shave that off and sculpt your form. Another thing that this allows me to do by putting the pads on first is it smooths out. Rather than having unnatural lumps and bumps, this will now actually just smooth out the volume, and when I come to put the cover on her towards the end, everything will actually be a lot more realistic. Don't be afraid to pin quite heavily. You don't really want anything slipping. You want it all to be secure when you come to put your cover on, whether or not you have to make a cover. And I can now cross-reference the measurement again. Around the widest point. As I say, I'm lowering her rear a little bit just so that it is in line with my own measurements. Fab. Perfect. So that now is 94 centimeters. I'm then going to start working up the body, padding out the waist accordingly now. I can take the measurement around the narrowest part of Mary's body, see if that matches up to mine. 69, my waist is 72. And so I can just keep on sculpting until our measurements align. And once you're happy and cross-referencing everything, making sure that it is in line with your measurements, you can build and build and build. This is a great way to play around with maternity wear if you want to build up the fuller part of the abdomen and stomach. This is a great way to account for asymmetries, as I've explained. So it's just a case of taking your time with it, using the resources that you have knocking about in your studio, and really starting to sculpt to build it to your measurements. This is why when you are in the market for a mannequin, if you are shopping cheap, try to get one as close to your measurements as possible, but if in doubt, downsize a little bit, because you then have the control to add in areas that is needed. Once you're at this stage, Mary herself came with a cover. Now, if you don't want to make a cover, a really great alternative is to put a one-piece swimming costume over your mannequin. And what this is going to do is it's just going to flatten down all the lumps and bumps of these Frankenstein higgledy-piggledy padding areas, and it's going to make it a nice, smooth, contoured fit. So I'm just going to dress Mary now. I'm reaching up here with my hand just to smooth out any bits that have caught. Although if you've pinned it well enough, that shouldn't really be the case. And once you're at this stage, it's now time to mark her. You can do this with your Chauvin tape and your drape tape. If you don't have that to hand, you can absolutely use string or a bit of ribbon. The benefit of string, and there is a benefit, is that it will create a small ridge that you'll be able to feel as you're draping ideas. Now that you've padded her out, you just want to triple check that her measurements are correct. So I will take her bust, waist and hip, cross-referencing at all times to your own measurements. And now it is time to mark her. So with some drape tape, I'm going to be at first marking my center front line. This is going to be running right down the middle of my mannequin and my center back line. You may notice that your tape actually comes away from the dress form, it might not stick to your covering. And what I like to do, another really important reason to use flat-headed steel pins, is I will run my finger down and I will secure it simply with a pin. But you want to be pushing that in to be as flat as possible. The amount of pins you use in this is actually going to be quite extensive, and therefore the changes you make, I mean, it's your prerogative if you want to unpin it and redo it for a different size. But for me, once I've done this on Mary, I don't think there's going to be much going back. Another top tip is not to pin totally perpendicular to the mannequin and push it in like this. If there is resistance, what might happen is it can push the pin back out. So always try to angle your pin in whenever you're pinning and working on the stand. It can really help you get a secure finish, and just take your time with it. So that is my centre back line. I'm now going to repeat that on the centre front. Once I'm happy with my centre front line, I can measure down from my highest shoulder point to my apex, knowing that this is going to become my bust line, and I can add my bust line parallel to the floor. Take your time with it. It's really important that we get this as straight as possible. You don't really want a wibbly wobbly line going across. So I'm just going to, with a bit of Chauvin tape, anchor this with a pin. And pull this round like so. Notice what a perfect finish that was. In terms of length, I've cut my Chauvin tape to be the same measurement as my bust line. You then want to repeat the steps for your waist and hip. I would also be measuring your apex to waist measurement so that you can cross-reference the distance on how low down these markings are going. You can measure your apex to your waist measurement, and this is going to really help you on where to place that on your centre front line before putting that around the circumference of your bodice. And again, notice as I'm coming round here, that this is a perfect length. So you really are cross-referencing at every stage. If you take your apex to apex measurement, mine is quite broad, and you can map that on like so. You can then take the distance from your apex to your waistline, whatever that is, and make sure that you are plotting your waistline in from the centre front line accurately. You then want to take your waist to hip measurement. You'll take that down the length of the side seam like so, and you can add your hip line. Making sure that that is straight as you work around. I'm then going to input my side seams. Now if you do have a cover, this might actually throw you off a little bit, but you're going to see here that this knit cover is actually warped out of shape, and my side seam, if I was going to follow the seam line on this, is actually swaying to the back. So I want this to be, again, perpendicular to the floor. I want it to run in line with my shoulder seam, as though we were going to continue that shoulder seam running down the body like so. So again, with the thanks of the Chauvin tape, I can use that as a marker, and I know that that starts by here. And I can just kind of let that go and see that hang straight before I start to stick that down. My final markings are going to be my style lines down here if I were to do a princess seam, and as before I just want to measure my apex to apex measurement. Now I know that my apex to apex measurement is actually broader than Mary here, and so it's going to end up running a little wider. I will take my Chauvin tape, and I'm going to measure, another reason the Chauvin tape is so good, I'm going to measure halfway across my shoulder seam here, which is 12 centimetres for me personally. I'm going to be measuring 6 centimetres before placing my Chauvin tape along there. And then I'm going to make sure that I run my Chauvin tape to half my apex to apex measurement, given I'm going to measure this from the centre front, that's why I'm halving it. And I'm going to make sure that I run that to the appropriate apex point for my unique figure. I'm going to secure and anchor that in with a pin by there on the apex, and then I'm just going to, as straight as I can, continue that line down. Ooh. And again, where it pulls away from the cover, I'm going to just secure that in with a pin. before repeating on the other side. When you come to hang this, what you can actually do is cross-reference your measurements from your waist, making sure that from the centre front I can see across here that is 2, 4, 6, 7.5. And so I can make sure that I'm placing this tape 7.5 along this side as well. 2, 4, 6, 7, and I know I need to move this in slightly there. So really, really useful. Again, if you don't have Chauvin tape, you can of course just use your tape measure and cross-reference as you go. And so this is the front of my padded out mannequin. I can then turn it around from halfway across the shoulder. I'm going to do the same and add the back style lines. And there we have it. We have got Mary to my measurements. You can go as extravagant and build up as much as you like, or as subtle, whatever your original tailor's dummy or mannequin measurements are. It's just about taking your time with it, cross-referencing to yourself, checking your apex to waist, checking your nape to waist, checking your waist to hip, and just really taking your time. When it comes to the armhole, this is just a general mapping. There is no rhyme or reason here. An armhole fit should be about 2 to 3 finger widths from your armpit, depending on personal preference and how close you like that to fit. And of course, taking into account wovens and knits as well. There's a lot to deep dive into. If you are watching this as a member who has exclusive first access, then congratulations to you. You found the secret video, and I cannot wait for you to combine this with all the lessons and resources in the DPL Atelier to enhance your sewing game. If you are watching this on YouTube months or weeks later, then I really hope that you found some value in this. And of course, I've hinted at it throughout the video, there is so much more value to be had inside the Atelier, our high value, low cost fashion membership. As part of our 2-year Atelier anniversary, you're actually getting a free scrapbuster pattern. So what you could pair this with is my scrap busting mannequin arm, allowing you to drape designs onto your mannequin form. So we can just pin this on like so and drape to your heart's content. You have access to the Draping 101 course as part of the DPL Atelier. There is a free pattern cutting basics course available to you as well. So there is a lot of value to be had from this. I cannot wait to see what you do with this, creating your unique size tailor's dummy, having fun, padding it out, making it as unique as you are, falling in love with your individual figure, and finally creating clothes that fit. Draping clothes that fit. That is what you deserve, and it is what makes us feel good. So any questions at all, get in touch with me, hello@digitalpatternlibrary.com. If you are a member, we have Designer Diagnosis. This is our monthly Q&A where I film bespoke video answers to your questions. Harness that, make use of it, ask me anything. I'm here to support you and cheer you on. And for now, I will catch you on the flip side.